We're going to ask you for your name and age first, if you please. If you don't, that's fine.
Shirley Hensel, and I'm 67 years old.
And Shirley's specialty for this, her special knowledge would be about the snack bar, so we're going to let her go ahead and fill us in on that first.
Okay, the snack bar was my parents' business in Elmore, right up on Rice Street in Elmore, downtown. And it started out with my uncle Bob Schroeder and my father Charles S. DeLongenecker, who started the business. And at some point, this was in the 40s, and then at some point my uncle left and my mom and dad had the business. And it was like a sandwich shop. We had a complete ice cream and soda business. You could get any kind of phosphate or soda or sundae or milkshake or malt, but mostly sandwiches and soups. And in the earlier years, they did the hand-cut French fries, which everybody loved. And we also had baked goods. My mom did bake homemade pies sometimes, or specialty soups, but then later on we got Tony's Bakery to come and deliver, so we also sold some of their products there. You could buy a large array of magazines. We even had greeting cards you could buy at one time. So it was kind of a little shop of a variety of things. We catered a lot to the teenagers. And so that was the big thing. And after school was out, everybody headed up to the snack bar. We had the jukebox and pinball machine, and we had pool table, and it was quite busy. And when there were special school events going on, like music programs that brought in students from other schools, a lot of them came up to the store and ate. My brother Richard and my sister Ruth Ann both worked in the store over the years, and me being the baby of the family, I just kind of hang out there, maybe help clear the tables or did dishes and those types of things. But we had a big array of candy and candy bars and chips, those type things, so kids would just pop in sometimes and just pick up some snack that they wanted. Otherwise, they'd sit there and play the jukebox and talk. We had the old-fashioned booths and tables and chairs, and of course the counter. And I was always told by my dad that they had the second TV in Elmore, and that was perched on a platform up in the one corner. So in earlier years, lots of people came in and watched all their favorite new shows that came out. And they were open, Monday was the day that they were closed, but the rest of the week and on Sundays they were open. And my dad was also the Toledo Blade distributor for, I believe, around 35 years. I know it was over 30 years. And back then you had the paper boys. So in the back long hallway, they would come in, the papers would be delivered, and they'd look for their bundles, and they'd sit there and they'd hand fold them and stick them in their bags and then go deliver them. Now that was the easy part. The hard part was getting them to collect the money. So sometimes Dad had to give a few little stern lessons, about, you got to collect your money now. I need my money and you need your money type thing. So it went very well for years, but once the turnpike came in, of course, that drew the traffic off of State Route 51, which goes through our village, and the business kind of died down, but we continued it until my father passed, and then my mother tried to hold on to it, and through the years we had fewer offerings, food and ice cream and that, but it was a good time. And you talk to any of the older folks and they remember always coming up to the snack bar, whether it was the farmers or on Sunday mornings they'd come in and have coffee before they'd head out to church. So it was a fun place to grow up, and all the area businesses and all the people that came in were like family. So as the years went on and they, one by one, they passed away, then it was like me losing one of my family. So it was great.
If you did, if you mentioned it, I missed it. What's your mom's name and her maiden name?
She was Geraldine, or Jerry. She went by Schroeder Longenecker.
Okay. And was there anything that really stands out in your mind? Some kind of funny story? I mean, I like the one about the newspapers. That was a good one too. But people who came in, or something funny that happened within the business?
Well, when the Hartmans, who was just 2 doors down, of course, was a competitor, and they got ice cream in. So the story was that my dad, I don't know if it was back then, whether it was a nickel or a quarter, he gave to one of the guys, and he says, go over to Hartman's and see how big their ice cream cone's gonna be. So, of course, this person, he had to tell Dick Hartman about it. So when he came out, he had an ice cream cone about this tall. And Dad, of course, got a kick out of it, but he said, he mumbled a few words under his breath. But
That is a funny story.
yeah,
I
that
like
was
that
a good
one.
one.
That's a very
and
good
they
one.
had lots of, they played cards in there, and they had a lot of pool tournaments. Now, when I got married and had 2 boys, who are not young anymore, but when my first one, Bob, was young, of course, he was intrigued by the pool table. So when he was little, we'd put him up on top of the pool table, and he'd toss the balls around. So we always, and the people coming in always got a kick out of seeing the kids.
Yeah, it really was a family business.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you had mentioned you grew up in Elmore. Can you tell us anything, let's say, about the schools, experiences in school, favorite teachers and such?
Well, I was born in Detroit, so, and my dad was always Michigan, so we were always Michigan fans. So I always said when I was involved in the schools that I had worked at Woodmore Schools for 16 years as the superintendent secretary over at the elementary site where the board office was housed. And I always said no matter what, I always stayed true to the blue and the yellow, and all I had to do was flip my W around and it was an M. Unlike other nuts in the community that went to Ohio State fans, I just stayed true. But in growing up, of course, we walked to school. I lived on 5th Street, and we'd have the neighbor kids all get together and you'd walk to school. And back then, you went to school no matter what, even if the weather was really inclement. Very few times that we were off. Now, the country kids, they got a little leniency. If they could get to school, if the bus could make it, otherwise they didn't. But it was a fun town to grow up in and to go to school. In fact, this past May, I had my 50th class reunion. And back then it was the good old HEHS, which was Harris-Elmore High School. And I have a terrible memory, so there's not a lot of stories that I could remember, except one in 1st grade. I had Miss Myers. She was a nice teacher, very capable, but she was a disciplinarian, and she was very thin, so we called her Miss Myers the Pliers. And back then, we would collect popsicle sticks, and the trick was that you could flip them at the kids. Well, someone was doing that in class, and of course, when I got the popsicle stick and I tried it, I was the one that got caught. So I got in trouble just that one time, never again, in all those years.
In telling the story about the snack bar, you had mentioned a competitor down the street. Do you remember anything else about the businesses that were going at that time?
Well, we had Max Reynolds, who had the plumbing business around the corner, and then right next door was Wentz TV and radios, and then right next to that business there was a door, and then the door to the snack bar, and that middle door went upstairs, and that was Doc Weber. He was the dentist, and I remember going up there. I didn't want to, but I had to. And then in years back, I remember there was, I think the next building at one time was a grocery store. And that was a different one that had that. And I don't know why I remember this, but in the springtime, right when you'd walk in where the checkout would be, they would have bulbed plants, like a hyacinth plant, and I just thought they were so pretty and they smelled so good. And that building then became the hardware. And so, of course, we always had the five and dime, and that was always a fun place to go to. But everybody was friendly. They all worked together, and you didn't have much animosity anywhere. It's just a very pleasant and nice town to grow up in, and I've always enjoyed it, and I especially enjoy when we just recently had the Memorial Day parade. I think we've got the best around.
I happen to agree with you.
It's really great, and it's well planned, and I'm glad to see that the patriotism continues.
And it's definitely something that you can see has been a tradition. It's still a traditional type
Right.
parade. It's very nice.
Right.
How about Elmore homecomings or any other events?
Oh yes, that you couldn't get by the summer without having a homecoming. And they were placed different areas. They had been down on the other side of Whitty Park. And I can remember when it was there one year, being on the Ferris wheel, and we got stuck at the top. And I thought, oh, this is cool. But then after we sat there for quite a while, that kind of drained away. And then I thought, am I ever going to get down?
That's funny.
And then we also had it just on the street out here by the library. We had it there for years, too. And they had a few rides, but they had the games. But that was the highlight of the summer. And we always used to, and we still do, at the fire department. But back years ago, it was where the old fire department was, right on the main street there where the police department and that is. We used to have, now I can't think what they're called, not raffles, but feather parties. And back then you'd go in there, it was always around Thanksgiving time. They usually had them maybe once, maybe twice a year, but you'd go in there and everyone smoked. And there was so much smoke, you couldn't see people until you got accustomed to it, and they'd spin the wheels, and you'd have the paddles with the numbers on. And I remember one year my dad won a live goose, and we thought, oh my goodness, what are we going to do with this? And he had to take it in the backyard, of course, and kill it. So we had goose that year, but wasn't our favorite. We'll stick to the turkeys that you buy in the store.
A little less dramatic.
Right.
Well, and I know you belong to St. John's Church, and we kind of would like to know what kind of, we know you're very busy there, what kind of involvement have you been in over the years with all of Elmore, not just the church?
Well, my first church that I grew up with was the Elmore Christian Church, or Church of Christ, which is no longer, and the building's gone also. But we were kind of the early descendants of St. John's, and they talk about Piety Hill and the walk to Piety Hill, so they went from there to our present location on Rice Street. And I had family, the Willies and the Schroeders, that went there. And I can remember I'd go to different events or maybe Vacation Bible School or something they had, and I thought, boy, this has got the beautifulest altar I've ever seen, and maybe someday I'll go there. So when I got married, my husband Mike and I, he was from the St. John's UCC in Genoa. So we took turns on Sunday. We'd go to my Christian church in Elmore. The next Sunday we would go to his, and back and forth and back and forth. And then we decided, gee, we have a St. John's right here in Elmore. Let's just go there. So we joined there. And let's see, that's probably going on 40 years. And I joined the choir because I can remember when I first started in the choir, I was expecting our first child, so he's going to be 40 in October. But when I was at home raising the kids and that thing, I got involved in this primary Sunday school. I was their primary superintendent downstairs for 10 years. But then when I started working, it was hard to be active in some of the clubs that the women belonged to. So once I retired then in June of 98, then I joined the honor workers. And I attended that maybe a year or so, then all of a sudden I got rooked into being president, and I've been president ever since. So that's kind of like the working group of the church for the women, and we do bereavement lunches, and we have monthly meetings, and we try to give yearly donations and church projects wherever needed, and it keeps me busy. And then we have Women's Guild, and we've got so that the membership is down for that. We try to pick a program, a yearly program, whether it's more of a study, whether it's the Beatitudes or the Ten Commandments or whatever we choose to do. We're women of the Bible or women in history. But it's gotten to, we only have maybe 6, 8 in attendance. So I'm fearful that this is going to be our last year for that, but we want to combine those things that we did in that, which was we'd give the confirmands their flower for confirmation, and we do a memorial service every year for the women of the church that had gone and passed away, and we plant a flower for each of them out front of the church. And we do the Christian Women's Breakfast, host that twice a year, so we're hoping the honor workers this fall will take over some of those activities. So it keeps me going, keeps me busy.
And I have personal knowledge that you're an accomplished singer. I don't know anything about your other musical talents. Can you tell us any stories about things that you got to do as a musician or singer?
Well, I don't know if I'm an accomplished singer, but I love music, any type, and I love to sing. But it's only been, I sang in the chorus in high school, but other than that, my sister was the singer in the family, and she sang solos, and she went to contests, and one year she sang on the radio, Fremont Station at Easter time and that. But as I joined the choir at church in more recent years, I have done some solos, and I enjoy that. But I tried to play the piano. I took lessons probably for 8 years. I think I was probably Miss Tank's worst student she had, but she liked me. My sister took, my brother, I think maybe he might have been the shortest span of time to take, but we would walk down from our house on 5th Street down to Fremont and take lessons. And back then I had real thick, long, curly Shirley Temple curls, and Miss Tank would remind me of the story when I'd be walking to get my lesson, and my curls would be bouncing up and down. She'd see me coming, and for some reason I got upset. I don't know why, probably because I didn't know the song I was supposed to have practiced, but I started crying. And then she felt really bad, and she would, years and years later, she'd bring that up to me. You were just the sweetest thing, but just, I don't know why I didn't do or say a thing, but you just started crying. So I gave up on the piano, and I really didn't play any other instrument, so it's mostly just singing.
Okay, we've also been asking people if they had any experiences to share from the blizzard of '78.
Well, we had a couple blizzards,
Okay.
and I get them mixed up.
Well,
But
either way.
I know my husband worked at Chrysler in Perrysburg. The first, one of the first big storms we had rented Bobo's upstairs of his home on Toledo Street. And I can remember when that was an earlier one before that. And Bob was just a little youngster, and I had to come uptown, and I had to get milk and diapers and different things for him. So that year wasn't so bad, but the 78, but both times Mike got stuck at Chrysler. And the one in 78, I believe, was he had gone to work. It had started out a very balmy day. I don't even know if he had a jacket on, and they were talking storms, but who would believe this? And I said, well, do you think you better pack a bag just in case? Well, he didn't listen, of course, but I think he was stuck at Chrysler for 4 or 5 days, and they brought in people from the turnpike into the plant because they were stuck. But on the home front, we lucked out. We never lost electric or our heat, which was good. If we'd lost electric, we wouldn't have had anything. But I can remember the wind howling, and even though we still had heat, the house was cold. So at that time, which we called the toy room, it was the warmest room in the house. So we went in there if we were cold, and we'd huddle up and have sleeping bags and things like that. And then when we attempted, I couldn't get the back door open, and I thought, oh, this isn't good. And we have a front porch with high shrubs and old fir trees, which kind of protects it. But our whole porch was almost filled to the top of snow, but for somehow I was able to get the door pushed open, and we managed. We had food in that, but the kids, when they could, they went out, and neighbor kids came over, and they built a snowman in front of our house and was as high as the upstairs window.
Wow.
And the newspapers came over and took it, so that they got their pictures and names in the paper. But it was quite something. Well, then Mike decided, even though they only had one lane yet on 51, he got as far, didn't have much trouble getting that far, and they weren't allowing people down it because, you couldn't see it was just walls of snow. But he said enough is enough, and thank God he didn't meet anybody on the way, and he made it home.
Yeah.
But that was quite a storm.
When you came in, I had seen that you had one of Mary Dino's buildings of the snack bar. Would you mind showing that to the camera? Those are pretty neat, and nobody's done that to this point.
Yes, she had made this.
A local artist, Mary Dino, had done these buildings, and they're quite a collection. They aren't made anymore, but There are quite a collection of them, and a lot of people have them of the different buildings.
And on the back of each, then she has a short synopsis of what had been in this building. I don't know if you'd want to, it's hard for me with my loss of vision to read that.
Sure, I will.
But it tells,
Okay, it says the snack bar was owned by Charles Longenecker and run as a restaurant since the 1940s until his death. It was a favorite hangout for the teenagers of Elmore. In the 1800s, Gossman Tailoring was in the building. Before Mr. Gossman, the post office was located here, and before that, a grocery store. The door to the left led to the office of Dr. Carl Weber, the dentist.
right.
Very nice. And one more thing. Do you have any favorite people in Elmore? Someone who influenced you?
That's a toughie.
Or someone you're very close to, or were very close to?
I had a friend from church that had moved here, and her and I became, even though she was a lot older than I at the time, Edna Haar, she lived on Huron Street. Her and I became close friends and went to church together, and at that, I think back on it often because at that time she did not drive. And so I would pick her up and take her to choir or take her to church or get groceries or whatever she needed. And I think back on that because of now with my loss of eyesight, and I haven't driven in over 13 years, and now I depend on people to take me places. And I think back, I'd say, well, Edna, why didn't you call me? I'd have been happy to take you, but now I kind of know the feeling. You don't keep pestering people to take you places. But I don't know, I just enjoyed everyone. Like I said, the different businessmen and the different farmers, and they all were part of the family. There was Ben Schaefer, who on Sunday mornings, he had a key to the snack bar, and he would come and open it up and get the Sunday blade and get it all ready to go and put on the outside distribution bin for people to buy. And he did that for Dad, and he was quite a character. But they all had their own special personalities. But to say that I had a community person, really, I don't.
Well, that's fair. If you enjoyed everybody, that's
Yeah.
fair. Okay, and unless you have something else that you'd like to, that you've thought of while you were sitting here.
No, I think that I'll probably think of lots of things when I get home. I thought I should take notes, but then I thought, no, then I
Well,
wouldn't be able to read them,
It's-
so
it's-
what good would that be?
It's nice when it's impromptu anyway. Well, thank you, Shirley. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks
We
for
enjoyed-
asking me.
Well, we
It
enjoyed
was a
it. Thank you.
pleasure. Thank you.